Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and this is Season 13, Episode 10. Today I'm speaking with the wonderful and lovely chef Alicia Shevetone, who is a culinary whirlwind. She's a pop-up chef, cookbook author, TV personality, and founder of Dink Cuisine, a food and entertainment company that curates culinary experiences across all media. Her first cookbook was Italian Cookbook for Two, and it's a delightful collection of 24 recipes that will take you from antipasti to dolce. With its focus on traditional flavor combinations and encouragement to experiment, this gem is sure to put a home cook at ease. Her second cookbook, Vegetarian Ketogenic Cookbook for Beginners, is Chef Alicia unlocks the protein-packed potential of vegetables and other meat-free foods. With 75 recipes and a meal plan, this book is the perfect guide to combining the benefits of the lacto-ovo vegetarian and ketogenic diets. Chef Alicia's third cookbook, out now, is Food with Spirit. Alcohol-infused recipes is set to be released in September 26, 2023, and this boozy collection features 50 recipes infused with everything from spiced rum to smooth cognac. Each recipe is complemented with beautiful photos and Chef Alicia's signature entertaining stories. And that is, just to correct myself, is out currently. So you can get that now. We have links to that in the bio. So you can follow Chef Alicia on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And she's all over the place. She's very popular and she's on television, and you've probably seen her on the news and other shows as well. I'm going to take you now to my conversation with Chef Alicia Shevetone, and that's going to be right now. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. I'm so happy to be talking with Chef Alicia Shevetone today. Alicia, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thanks, Dean.
So just for our listeners, can you tell us where you're from and where you live now?
Yes, I was born and raised in San Jose, California, now living in Las Vegas, Nevada.
So you're a local girl.
Yes.
Well, for those of you who know, I'm in the Bay Area, so that's why I say that.
I know. I was just home last weekend. I just got home yesterday.
Oh, did you eat out anywhere? Did you go to any restaurants out here?
Original Joe's, kind of family favorite, so we had to go to Original Joe's, kind of a requirement. So yeah, we got to do that, which is really fun. And then one of the things I think I knew at some point that the Fairmont downtown had changed over to a Hilton signature or some nice version of their Hilton, and I had a chance to have breakfast there as well at the Fountain, which was great, really, really fun. Yeah, had a great time.
I love that place. I want to ask you, growing up, did you have any culinary inspirations or mentors growing up that kind of influenced your love of cooking?
Well, although I didn't appreciate it at the time, my mother is just an absolutely brilliant cook, home cook. She, our family was in the restaurant business. But back in the 70s and 80s, I grew up, I was born in 1971. She was pulling out cookbooks from, all over the world and making, globally inspired cuisine, from Hungary and, Japan. I mean, all different types of cuisine. We're Northern Italian, so we definitely had an Italian bias in terms of the foods that, she prepared for us. But definitely my mom. Secondarily, I would say I was a huge PBS kid. So watching public television, I would watch Julia Child, Jacques Pepin, Yan Can Cook, Great Chefs of the World. When other kids were watching, cartoons, I was waking up at 6 a.m. and trying to keep the TV as low as possible without waking up my mom so that I could watch cooking shows on PBS. So not your average kid, but that's kind of where I fell in love with it. Yeah, it was great. Great influences.
I'm glad you said that, because I was pretty much the same way. I loved watching all those shows, and I would get up before my parents and watch them all too. I just love those shows.
Good old KQED.
That's right. That's right. Did you always kind of know you'd be working in the food industry? I mean, you mentioned that your parents had a restaurant. Did the bug kind of get under your skin also for that?
Actually, it was my grandparents.
Grandparents, yeah.
And then when I was born, they had sold their restaurant at that point, and then they were just in the bar business. And my grandma wound up selling the business. On my dad's side, My mother's Italian, and my father, who's unfortunately deceased, his family was in the restaurant business in the LA area, French restaurants, as French. So both my grandparents, my dad's side, were actually born in France. But no, I at the time I didn't even. I was pushed more to the academic side of things.
Hmm.
So from a as a kid, I was really raised to have very, very good grades and go to college and go to law school. I graduated from law school and never thought about food and beverage at all as a career. This wasn't something I discovered until later in life, that it was actually something I wanted to pursue. And you kind of look back to your roots and what makes you happy as a person and what drives you, not just what helps you make money and affords you with a lifestyle that you're accustomed to, but actually what gives you, you know, um, the sense of calm and a sense of peace and just a warmth in your heart. And for me, that was cooking, but I didn't pursue it as a career until much later.
I read in an interview that you had some trepidation about utilizing the term chef in your promotion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of, it's not necessarily an issue for me. I think it's somewhat of an issue for some of the culinary community, particularly here in Las Vegas, where you grind it out on the line. You go to culinary school. It means something different. If you come up a certain way from an academic standpoint, in particular, where you dedicate your career and you slog it out on the line for 15, 20 years or longer. Somebody like that doesn't necessarily want to look at someone like me as a chef, who comes up more through the homeschool route. I guess the comparison that I tend to give all the time is Rachel Ray. I mean, people,
Yeah.
people on cooking shows, they'll refer to her as chef, and she's like, well, I'm a home cook. I'm a home cook. It's like, hey, listen, if someone wants to call me chef, cool. I just more care about kind of front of house guest experience. I care about, how my food tastes, and whatever you want to call me is absolutely fine with me.
Fair enough. I wanted to ask you about, you have many hats on most of the time. You're a pop-up chef, cookbook author, television personality, and founder of Dink Cuisine. You wear many hats in the culinary world. How do you manage to juggle all these at the same time?
Yeah, there's another hat too. It's culinary entrepreneur. I started a spice line earlier this year called Distill Spices. So yeah,
Oh my
that's again
God.
another
So
hat.
even
Yes.
more. Oh my, how do you do this all?
It's really I have a very good marriage. I have a lot of balance in my life. I say no to things that I don't want to do. If something makes me uncomfortable or if I think I'm going to be spread too thinly, I'm learning how to, put up barriers to kind of preserve my health. And for a while there, I was running way too hard. I was doing, a couple of events a month, which doesn't really sound like a lot, but when you think about all the logistics and selling tickets and promoting it and, actually doing the cooking and then hiring people if I need to in order to actually, make it run smoothly, I was really starting to burn out. And
Yeah.
I wound up getting really severe bronchitis in June, and I had to cancel my first event ever, which was devastating to me. And I realized I need to kind of push the pause button. So second half of this year, I really pulled back and focused on doing just a lesser amount of events, but doing them very, very well, and also preserving my mental state and my health and making sure that I don't, get sick. And but other than that, it's more just truly being stimulated by the work. If you really, and I hate to use that trite expression, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, but it's actually true in this particular case. These are things that I find fun. It's not really work. It's just making
Yeah.
sure that I'm meticulous about my schedule, and that, I'm communicating to people who are on my team or people who are helping me, that they understand that I'm not always going to be focused on them, that I have other things that I'm doing. And part of that is just, trying to be a good leader, trying to be a good communicator, so that everybody understands their role and how they fit in to
I
make
want to
us all
talk
successful.
I want to talk about the whole boundaries thing and like learning when to say no, because I think that's something I've talked to so many authors recently who kind of after the taping was over talked about this aspect of it. I think that
Mhm.
creative people, especially people who are, doing a lot of different kind of things in their business life,
Mhm.
it's hard to kind of learn to say no, isn't it? Because you get a lot of opportunities, people want you to do this and that. Ultimately, you can kind of, I've seen a lot of people really burn out, especially recently. I know a few bloggers that have really crashed and burned. Do you want, I mean, can you talk about this a little bit? I don't want to get
Yeah.
too personal, but like, I think this
No,
is something we can all relate to, right?
no, and I think we all try to help each other, and this is another thing. Vegas is amazing for networking.
Yeah.
People really support each other here. And when you have a fellow chef that's going to come to you with an idea and say, "Hey, I'd really love to be able to do this with you," you know that they're passionate about it, so you want to support them and help them achieve their vision.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say no because, and I used to act in high school, like I was in high school plays and stuff, and I almost pursued theater as a major before
Yeah.
I was convinced I was going to go to law school. And I love being on TV. I love recognition. I love validation. I want to say yes to things because the more things I say yes to, the more people I'm going to reach and the more excitement I'm going to create. And it's buzz and it's social media and it's all like, yay. That's the fun part, right? It's fun for me. It's not fun for the certain chefs that absolutely hate it,
Yeah.
despise and view it as a necessary evil. I actually love that. So I say yes to things because I find it stimulating, but it's also a reason for people to say, "Hey, you're doing something super cool." But you sort of realize that you would much rather do, in many cases, or at least this is the realization that I had, I'd much rather do things very, very well and be meticulous because I don't like missing details. And
Yeah.
the more you say yes, you know and there's a very constructive way to do that, to validate people, to validate their ideas, and just say, "I would love to be able to collaborate with you. Can we maybe take a look at doing something next year? Is that something you'd be open to?" And really sort of test them out so that they know you're not saying no to them, you're not rejecting them. You really are, if you are authentic and you really do like the idea, that there's ways to do that, to put up those barriers that you can have your cake and eat it too. You
Yeah.
can still do these things, but just be mindful about the toll it's going to take, because if the quality suffers either with the taste of your food or the presentation, because you don't have enough staff, because you were too last minute and you tried to squeeze it in, and then nobody's happy, and then you're frustrated because it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to. um, there's consequences, for saying yes too much. So I started to realize that too, that it's like, as much as I might want this, if logistically I can't see it through and execute properly, I gotta say no. I just have to,
Yeah.
or at least later. Yes, yes, but later.
Yeah. Down the line, a couple of years from now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Dink Cuisine. What inspired you to start this company, and what are some of the unique culinary experiences you've curated through the company?
So I started the concept in 2017, which is when I reserved the URL for my website. It kind of took me a while to kind of get it together, but my husband and I are childless by choice. And if you look at sort of mainstream cookbooks, there's a little bit of a bias there. There's a bias towards families. There's a bias towards cooking for large groups. There's a mindset out there that if you decide that you want to cook something, that there's probably at least 4 to 6 people in the room for you to feed, which isn't the case. So if you look at the most recent census, I think it was 2.54 people. So there are way more households with closer to 2 people than there are 8 to 10.
Yeah.
But there's no alignment when you look at recipe development, and you look at cookbook authors. Everybody is still sort of holding on to this concept of the American family as this huge thing, and it's not. That's not true.
Yeah.
So I got sick of doing math. I didn't want to have to do fractions every single time I decided to write a recipe and pull a recipe out of one of my cookbooks, and I've got probably close to 100, or online, and they're all written for 6 to 8 servings. So I was put into a situation where if I didn't do math and I made the recipe, because I'm a good little soldier, make it as the recipe writer intended, I either had to meal plan and save that food, or if I didn't want to eat it, I had to throw it out. So I was wasting food, which meant I was wasting money, or I would overeat the portions because I loved the food. So I wasn't just eating 1 serving. I was eating 2 servings, sometimes even 3 servings. And that made me gain weight. So if you kind of take a look at sort of from a root cause standpoint, everything has to do with cooking mindfully and actually cooking and right sizing your portions to the people that are in your household. And that's why I really thought I was onto something with. empty nesters, cooking for two people that were, don't have kids like me, roommates, somebody caring for an aging parent. So many different types of dynamics of households for two that I think are underrepresented, from a cookbook standpoint.
I really think this is something that's really big right now. So many people are starting that I've talked to and interviewed are doing small batch recipes, recipes for two. It's a thing that like I think is becoming more as you said, like I don't know how many times I've looked at recipes that I've wanted to cook and then I'm like, this is too much. I don't know how to half this or quarter this. This is just, kind of it kind of makes a lot of cookbooks not really plausible for me because everything, like you said, is like for farm hands and stuff like that.
Yes.
You're making it for like 20 people.
We don't all live on ranches. Yeah. I mean,
No.
as much as I love the pioneer woman, I love her to death, but no, I'm not all feeding like a bunch of cowboys. So
Yeah. I tend to be eating this stuff like days, like I'm eating third day, I'm still eating the same thing because, I don't want it to go to waste. So it's like, oh no.
Well, and when you think about and Las Vegas is a dynamic city, it's a 24/7 town. My husband and I live here. We relocated here because we want dynamic lives.
Yeah.
And especially post-pandemic. I mean, I don't want to have my decisions made for me at the end of the day as to what I'm going to eat. I'm not, even though I do have a cookbook that has a meal plan in it. Well, my vegetarian keto cookbook has a meal plan for people that choose that. That's not how I personally today want to live. I want to know that at the end of the day, I could be anywhere in this town and I don't want to have to pull a brick out of the freezer just because I made it 3 days ago and I don't want to waste it.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the lifestyle you want, I think, in many cases.
Yeah. So did you always kind of know that you're going to be a food writer? At what point did you think, this is really the path that I want to go down?
Well, I was an English major because I knew I was going to go to law school. So when I became an English major, I had two primary goals. One, I wanted to be able to learn how to read quickly, which I still don't do very well. I read relatively slowly, but I also wanted to be able to write very well and clearly articulate myself, which is very important as an attorney. I think a lot of people underestimate that. They all think of kind of courtroom drama type stuff, but reading and writing is really sort of core to being able to clearly communicate and interpret the law, right? But I loved writing. It was my favorite thing to do. And as I kind of went through my career, and I realized that I could connect the two, that it was actually possible to have something that I actually cared about, which was food, and something that I happened to be really, really good at, which is writing, that it just made sense to kind of combine them. I wish I would have figured it out a lot earlier, but I didn't really kind of put it together until my mid to late 40s.
Your first cookbook was Italian cookbook for two, following the theme of cooking things for just a few people rather than like, ranch hands and stuff like that. It's a celebration of the traditional Italian flavors. What are some of your favorite Italian dishes from the cookbook that you like to make?
Well, I think one of my favorites is bagna cauda. Bagna cauda is sort of a northern Italian dip, if you will. So it's in my family we make it with sour cream, but it's primarily just melted butter. Sometimes people make it with olive oil, and anchovies and garlic, and you dip crudité and bread. And it's just sort of something that we would always have at the middle of the table. And it was always
hold on just 1 second, please.
Yeah.
I'm going to just pause right here. All right. Thank you. I'm back.
Okay, no problem.
Go ahead.
So I would say probably one of my favorite recipes from the cookbook is bagna cauda, which is a northern Italian dip that's made with my goodness, sorry, something's coming across. It's made with melted butter. We make my family with melted butter, anchovies, garlic, and we actually add a little bit of sour cream. So you dip crudité, you dip bread into it, and it's just sort of something that's in the middle of the table. Kind of starts as an appetizer, but kind of lingers throughout the meal, which is kind of fun. And so I actually turned bagna cauda into a mac and cheese. So I kind of paired it more like with a bechamel. And made a cream sauce, and then added that, and then you put I used ditalini pasta, so like the small little kind of almost small little macaroni, And yeah, that's absolutely delicious. I also do a mashup, an Italian cookbook for 2 of my cannoli brownies. So I make
Oh,
a
wow.
really fudgy brownie. And then I make like for the frosting, it's like essentially the filling of a cannoli, but it's made with, mascarpone, and I put a little bit of almond extract, and I put little mini chocolate chips, and
Oh, wow.
I always love my cannoli with the little maraschino cherries at either end. So there's little maraschino and chopped to kind of, garnish. So they're they're excellent, I must say.
That sounds wonderful. Oh my God, I'd eat that whole pan. Your second cookbook is the Vegetarian Ketogenic Cookbook for Beginners. It's a
Yes.
guide to combining the benefits of lacto-ovo vegetarian and ketogenic diets. What are some of the challenges and rewards of cooking ketogenic?
Well, I think a lot of people, and I was keto for years. I was actually very successful in paleo and keto diets, particularly, started about 10 years ago. And my personal journey is I was really heavy on the protein side, because a lot of women in particular don't get enough protein.
Yeah.
And you really sort of default to, animal protein, because that's where you get kind of like the biggest bang for your buck. And, if you're vegan or you're vegetarian, you kind of come out on the short end of the stick with that a lot of times. So I think a lot of people, when they're trying to eat low carb, you take a look at something like, legumes or like beans or, even pasta, sometimes you look at a vegan and you perceive them as being overweight. All they're really trying to do is avoid animal protein, but they may
Yeah.
be focused on a very high carbohydrate diet, which, the whole purpose of this book was to, kind of regulate that and help people understand that by eating eggs. So if you do, that's where the ovo comes in. If you do, if you're okay with eating eggs, there's a lot of ways that you can get some great protein with a vegetarian diet, by also eating eggs.
Are there some good recipes that you want to recommend from that one?
One of the things I really love is my egg white salad. So instead of
Ooh.
just a traditional egg salad, it's sort of there's a rancho twist to it. So I actually make a pico de gallo, and
Oh,
then I
wow.
take the whites of hard-boiled eggs, and then I chop them together. And it's like I can eat it by the bucket. It is so unbelievably good, and there's something about it. And I actually will admit, I think I even said this in the intro to the recipe in the cookbook. I stole the idea from Trader Joe's. I may have not listed Trader Joe's by name, but they had a really, really good pre-packaged egg white salad that I think they called their ranchero egg white salad. And I just eat 2 or 3 containers of that like a day for like months. It just went on
That
for
sounds
months
good.
and months and months and months. So yeah, that was their little contribution to the book.
I like that.
Yeah.
Your third cookbook was Food with Spirit: Alcohol Infused Recipes, and it's gonna be released soon. What can readers expect from this boozy collection?
So this actually came out on September 26th. So it's out
Oh,
now. It's
I got
it's
a little late.
shipped.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's okay. I actually did a signing at Barnes and Noble in Henderson, Nevada, which is right next door, the town right next door to us, and signed a couple of copies. So they're on the shelves now if they aren't already sold. So this cookbook is sort of near and dear to my heart, and Italians are kind of known for cooking with a lot of wine, but also a lot of different types of liqueurs,
Yeah.
and particularly having very boozy desserts. So I joke about the fact that when I was a kid, my mom makes these amazing bourbon balls. So they're like little chocolate, moist little balls, but they're just flushed with bourbon.
That
And when
sounds
I was a
good.
kid, I would eat them by the dozen. I mean, and then you roll them in powdered sugar. They're absolutely delicious. They're not in a cookbook. I didn't steal the recipe. Um, but I remember vividly as a kid thinking to myself, I'm horsing these down and everybody else is eating, animal crackers. And, all the other kids in my class, like, why do I like this type of stuff? And I didn't know it was bourbon. I mean, I had no idea. I was little, but it was just sort of something that I adopted as a kid that was sort of like informed how I perceived desserts even growing up. Like, even my parents always used to buy Christmas gifts for their friends and for our family. And even Marcus, they would have these boozy cakes in their little gift. I don't know if you remember, they kind of had like a gourmet gift part, particularly in San Francisco. And they used to buy just dozens of these cakes and just hand them out, to everybody. And when I would get to taste one, I'd be like, it doesn't taste like any other cake that any of my friends have. It was because they were loaded with booze. But so yeah, that was sort of the inspiration. It just sort of stuck with me, I guess.
Any recipes from that you want to mention?
Yeah, one of the things that I really, really love, and I would probably have got the sense too that I'm really known for my mashups. So I love taking something that's traditional and reinventing it in a way that's kind of my own, and that I can, kind of put my own stamp on it, so to speak. And chicken marsala meatballs is that for me. It's one of the standouts that I just love. I've served it at many events, and it's always gets rave reviews. And so it's really good. You kind of basically take ground chicken, and then you put all the ingredients that you essentially would, but then you make a marsala sauce with the mushrooms and fresh thyme, and it's just dynamite. I love that one.
That sounds amazing. I like that idea. As a television personality, you've appeared on a number of cooking shows. What are some of the most memorable experiences you've had on set?
Oh man. I've got my own cooking show, my own show called Sin City Kitchen. And so I would have to say that some of the memories I've created on my own show have just been phenomenal. So I just launched season 2 of Sin City Kitchen. First episode was with a comedian named Lunel. I don't know if you're familiar with Lunel, but she just released a Netflix special that was produced by Dave Chappelle. And
Oh,
so
wow.
she was my star for episode 1 of season 2. And we actually kicked it off with a watch party at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club, where Lunel has a residency twice a week,
Oh, wow.
Sundays and Mondays. And so they closed down the club for us after the, last comedian of the night performed. They closed down the club, and Lunel came in, and we had, at a party, and we watched the episode. And she just, she said such beautiful things. She addressed the crowd, and, she supported, distilled spices. Cause in the episode, I gave her all 7 of my seasonings, and I had it nicely packaged for her. And she's like, support Alicia and what she's trying to do. It's very difficult to start a brand, and
Yeah.
to kind of get that support from her was just like, amazing. So yeah, I was very touched by that.
What are some of the favorite tips and tricks for home cooks that you might have?
Well, if you do have a smaller household, I would encourage people to take a look at their bakeware, and their utensils, their pans. That a lot of people think, well, how can you possibly take something like lasagna and distill it down to be able to cook something like lasagna for 2 when you're used to gigantic portions and casseroles? If you invest in a really good quality loaf pan, whether it's glass or whether or not it's it's metal, it doesn't really matter. You can use different types of vessels and different types of bakeware to really pull down your portions so that you can still enjoy things that are made, apparently for, kind of family style and casseroles and lasagnas for smaller format. Same with pans. Sometimes people just buy pans, they don't really put any thought into it, and all of a sudden they're not cooking at the right temperature because everything is spread out into an even layer, and it cooks faster than what the recipe's telling them. And then they get all flustered. So what you really need to do is when you're hopefully you're picking recipes for like literally that are optimized for the amount of people in your house, but that it's not just that, it's that you're also cooking with the right instruments. You don't want a gigantic spatula or a pair of tongs that are like this huge when you're only flipping 2 burgers or something, spatulas or tongs or whatever. Especially when you're deep frying, don't get a gigantic Dutch oven to be able to deep fry something when you can get away with doing it in a small pot. It's
Oh,
wasteful.
yeah.
So be mindful about what you're cooking, and make sure that you're actually choosing the appropriate tools to help you not make it worse and not get the right result for the recipe.
I want to talk about the Las Vegas food scene. For those of us who've not been there and haven't experienced it, what can you tell us about it?
So we're really into food halls now. That's the latest thing. There's a new casino that's opening down the street, up the freeway from us, just a couple of exits, called the Durango. And they're going to have a cool food hall in there. Resorts World, which is a mega casino that's actually on the strip, kind of down from the Wynn. They have a huge, food hall that is, globally inspired, mostly Asian cuisine. But that's kind of where it is now. There's also one in the Summerlin area called Summerlin Takeout, where there's a bunch of chefs almost treating it as a commissary, where you could come in and get takeout, and they have these cool little lockers where you go up to this electronic kiosk, this digital kiosk, you enter your order, you wait for a little bit, and then the food comes through in an old school locker, and you just
Oh,
open up
wow.
the locker and your food is there, and you shut back the locker, and so those sorts of things. So those sorts of there's also one called the Sundry in a new commercial development here in Vegas called the Uncommons. So that's just, a bunch of different food purveyors and, some full format restaurants where you can actually just go in and, there's other, ones that are smaller that are just little stations that you can order from. And it's kind of all digital where you kind of go in and you see the menus for everybody and you just pick what you want. So that's been really fun because it's a way that I think a lot of chefs that are more tiptoeing in the water that don't want to invest in a full brick and mortar restaurant on their own, that they can actually take their concepts and even test them out, or they can kind of do almost like a halfway concept, which allows the public to really enjoy their food in a way that they may not have otherwise done so.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Alicia, what's next for you?
Oh my goodness. Well, one of the questions that you asked me earlier was what have been some of the highlights of Dink Cuisine, and one of the most fun events I've had. And earlier this year, I had an event with Tiffany, who is a singer. She's a pop star. She was big in the '80s, but
Oh,
she's
yeah.
tremendous career. She's done about, I think she's up to 12 albums now. She just released a new album called Shadows. So we did a VIP event. She's really into food, and she has her own cooking club called Let's Food with Tiffany. And so we did an event together in Las Vegas. She had a residency in Vegas for a while, many years ago, and this is a town that she loves. And so we actually had 60 covers, so 60 VIPs that did an entire Mediterranean cuisine concept for, and then she performed after that. So that was really, really fun. Tiffany's coming back to town in January or February. We haven't nailed down dates yet, but we are actually going to, fingers crossed, write a cookbook together. That is
awesome.
We've developed our concept. We want to try to maybe have like an '80s themed, but also very much like a lifestyle book that talks about, what it means. We're only a few months apart. So she just turned 52 a few days ago. I am 52. I turned 52 in May. So we had, in many ways, these sort of parallel lives where we were pursuing careers. She pursued music, I pursued my corporate life. And then we discovered that food was our passion. And so the book that we want to put together is not just our recipes of food that served us well in the '80s, but also food that serves us well now, and how we've sort of matured and have, are trying to be healthy and, trying to lead, really, really great lives, and bringing people along with us and sharing that journey. So it should be really, really fun. I'm very excited about that project. It's a lot. There's a lot of logistics to still make it happen, but that's something that I'm really looking forward to.
That sounds amazing. I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I'm going to include links to all your cookbooks, but most specifically Food with Spirit, which was just recently released. I'm going to feature that as well. Alicia, thank you for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you.
Thank you, Dean. Well, it was a pleasure, and would love to point all my fans over to follow you and make sure that they continue to support you. Certainly appreciate everything that you're doing for our community, and look forward to anybody that wants to follow me on Dink Cuisine on Instagram, and encourage them to follow you back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean.
That was my conversation with the wonderful Alicia Shevetone. You can find links to her cookbooks in the bio, especially her newest one, Cooking with Spirit. That's available through all major outlets and at all better bookstores. Next week, we're going to be speaking with Tessa Quiros, the famous cookbook author who's written many wonderful and loved cookbooks, including Falling Cloudberries, Apples for Jam, and Providence to Pound Cherry. She has many other cookbooks as well, and we're going to be talking with the wonderful Tessa Quiros next week. Until then, I hope you all have a really wonderful week, and I'll see you at the library.